Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all out, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans dripped in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all out, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. And the New York Mets are on the brink of a total and absolute collapse of the 2025 season, ladies and gentlemen, as the New York Mets lose again in basically just a non-competitive game. Once again, 11-3 was the final. It was just an all-around bad loss. Once again, the pitching didn't do its job. I mean, right off the bat, you're losing. I mean, every single day, the Mets are not, the Mets are behind early in the game every day. And it's so frustrating. It's so ridiculous how everything is just lining up for us to be a complete disaster at the end of the day. And everybody knows this. We all know this. We all know it's going to come down to the final 3 games against the Marlins at the end of the year, as the Mets have 16 games to play. We all know it's going to come down to the Marlins series. We all know that. You know why? Because we love torture. Not that we want it, but we get it from this team. There is not an easy way of the Mets just making us happy. Even last year, it took to the final days of the year to make the playoffs. And the craziness of that, as good as the Mets were for a couple of months at the end of the year, one of the best teams in baseball since June last year, it still took them to the final day to make the playoffs. They've been in a playoff spot the entire year through 146 games, playing 147 today. The New York Mets are lucky they are still in a playoff spot. And you know what? They're lucky that teams are facing each other that are behind them. And one's playing each other, one's playing a team that is in front of us. So if they kind of like win, lose against each other, it's hard for anybody to gain much ground on the Mets because they're going back and forth here. And every day the Mets, cut a game off their schedule, it's one step closer to making the playoffs. It is one of these seasons where there's disappointment, there's bad management, there's bad decision-making at the executive level, there is bad performances by players, there is players who's gone into massive slumps this year. I mean, there's nobody not at fault here. And, of course, we'll all have our blame of individual opinions about each player on this team, executives, managers, doesn't matter. The fact that you were 20-plus games over 500 a couple of months ago, you were basically cruising into the playoffs, and now you're fighting for your dear life with 2 weeks to go into the season, is a detriment and a failure of everybody, right? Everybody's going to have their person to blame or a couple of people to blame. That's absolutely fine. And again, you're not wrong with anybody you say. Like, you could say David Stearns, you could say Hefner, you could say Chavez, Barnes, Stearns, Cohen, doesn't matter. Alonso, Soto, does not matter. Does not matter. I've said this over and over and over again. When the Mets actually went all in at a trade deadline, they made it to the World Series. And that was in 2015. That was the only time they bite the bullet. They got uncomfortable and they went and made the aggressive, very uncomfortable, and some people weren't very happy that they gave their number 1 overall pitching prospect for a guy that had flaws, but was needed on that team. The Mets needed a big bat. They got a big bat. Obviously, they got bullpen arms. They got a couple of bench pieces. And then ultimately, they filled every hole they needed in that deadline. You go back to the following years. The years that just happened a couple of years ago. We talked about 2022. Obviously, that wasn't David Stearns, right? Not, getting Vogelback, getting Ruff, getting Naquin, getting Givens for the bullpen. It wasn't the right moves. You went the lesser route for whatever reason, and it still comes back to the prospects. And I don't care. I don't care that McLean is pitching so well. If he was that important to this organization, if he was that untouchable, this kid needed to be up in June, regardless of a draft pick, regardless of rookie status. He needed to be up here. It was way too long to wait. So when we look at this entire situation, when you could have brought up Nolan McLean, who the Mets clearly had a favoritism for, and who's shown to jump up the charts in AAA, he was the guy that should have came up in June. If you didn't want to bring up 2 or 3 guys in June, okay, I get it. But you should have brought him up in June. Like, I can't take a GM seriously or a president of baseball ops seriously and talk about winning and sustain success when you don't do everything in your power to win. That's a problem. Not only can you bring up Nolan McLean in June, you would know what you have in him, regardless if he's pitching well in June or not. You know what you have in him within a month and a half until the trade deadline, so you can make decisions. The indecision is what made you call up all 3 of these guys within 3 weeks of each other, way too late, when this team was already spiraling out of control. June was the month where you could have salvaged a June month and have a 500 month, or at least close to it, where it wasn't a disaster of a month. That started the downfall. You had an April and May that was really damn good. And you allowed June, because of your conceitedness, your cockiness of thinking everything is going to be okay because Sean Manaea is coming back and Kodai Senga, got hurt, but he's coming back. He'll be come back. It was ridiculous to understand that this is the thought process that never works. How many times have we heard in the past, oh, well, when this guy comes back from injury, it's like a deadline acquisition. That was the mindset of Sean Manaea, coming back 2 weeks before the trade deadline and coming back before the All-Star break. Same thing with Kodai Senga with injury. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. There's no evidence, none, where you half-ass another deadline and it works out in your favor. It works out in your favor. Are we shocked that the teams that actually made better moves and made the more aggressive moves are doing better than the New York Mets right now? Where the Philadelphia Phillies are running away with a division? Because even though they technically didn't need a center fielder, they went out and get Harrison Bader. Now, I'm not going to be the first one to tell you that I wanted Harrison Bader. I was in between. I wanted Luis Robert. Everybody knows that. But when Harrison Bader, Luis Robert, and Cedric Mullins are all out there, and you get the least, the lesser of all of those guys in Cedric Mullins, you went the cheap route. When we found out 2 weeks after the deadline from John Heyman that the New York Mets had an opportunity to land Jared Duran before they went and got Helsley, because it happened within an hour of each other. The New York Mets, they were willing, they just wanted one pitching prospect. One. They didn't say which one. They wanted one pitching prospect in our top 10. One. For Jared Duran, who's under control, not a rental. And you didn't do that. Now, ultimately, would that have been worked out? No. I always said this. If you go all out at the deadline and you do what you need to do to fill the holes necessary, all the holes, not some, all of them. David Stearns put this team in a situation with his roster construction where there was more holes than even he thought he needed at the deadline when he started this season. Yet, I knew that the rotation was going to need a ton of help. And if you knew you were not going to get a starting pitcher that was worth getting, that's a top starter, top 2, top 3 starter in baseball at the trade deadline, then needs at least Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat or Jonathan, one of those two, or both of them, 2 out of the 3 should have been up here in June. Like, nobody knew that pitching was going to cost a lot when it always costs a lot for starting pitching that is worth getting. Like, why are we shocked by that? David Stearns failed. He absolutely failed. He failed in the offseason by not doing what he was supposed to do. He told everybody that Sean Manaea was worth $25 million. Have anybody ever looked at Sean Manaea's career ERA? Have you ever looked at his season's ERA when he had probably one great season? And that was way before 2020. And every other seasons are high 3s, low mid 4s. It's not a guy you give $25 million to for 3 months of a really excellent pitching. Failure. You don't give 2 years, $34 million to Frankie Montas when there was better options out there at a cheaper rate or even similar rate. You don't go with Clay Holmes when you already have a ton of question marks in your rotation and put another question mark in there. Even though Clay Holmes has been better than expected, we needed more for him because of the outcome of this terrible rotation. And we find ourselves acting like it's okay. Way too many people are acting like that. Way too many people are acting like it's everybody else's fault, yet David Stearns put this team together. And I don't want to hear people saying, oh, he's only evaluated. It's his second year. Then he shouldn't talk about winning. If you're going to evaluate, and I said this last year, if this was such a transition year last year, then you needed to completely trade and not sign certain people and waste a ton of money on guys that are not very good if that was a transition year. If you wanted to evaluate, you shouldn't have signed Pete Alonso. You shouldn't have signed a couple of pitchers. You should have brought all the kids up and evaluated them at the major league level if last year was a transition year. That was the idea. But because you thought that it was cute to say it was a transition year, have a surprise season, and then you knew it was a surprise season and you're in a transition year and you're evaluating, so you half-assed the deadline last year when you started pitching yet again. You could have got another starting pitcher in here. Most of these guys weren't even developed yet, where they were just, there was still a lot of them in AA. There was still a lot of question marks with these guys. Nobody knew what they were going to be the following year. You could have made you could have made a trade at the deadline for a starting pitcher to help out Severino, to help out Sean Manaea, because they eventually broke down in the playoffs. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I just don't understand. I see people talking about Mendy, and I don't know what they're talking. Let's see. Hold on. Hold on. Let's see. And yeah, Holmes always shits the bed. Like, why are we shocked by that? Right? I'm not shocked by that. Well, after they signed Soto, he did nothing. But let's not act like Soto was signed in November. All right? It was what? A few days, what was it, a week or two after or a week after a couple of days after the winter meetings. So it was already December. The Mets already signed Clay Holmes. They already signed Frankie Montas. I think they signed Shomanaya not just before that. So they were able to get guys. Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, it had nothing to do with that. They had the money to do it. Again, they pulled $25 million. What was it? $13 million for Clay Holmes and $17 million. Let's do the math really quick. What is that? Nearly 40. What is that? Close to $40 million, more than $40 million on 3 pitchers for 1 year. Just for this year alone. Like, it's just, like, it just doesn't make sense. And D, I was always justified with this negativity because I told you so. I have never pivoted about the problem of this rotation. And I ultimately think this was always going to be the downfall of this team. Go back to March when we did opening day shows. I said the same thing. Go back to when we did our season preview right before the season. I said the same thing. I never pivoted from this rotation, even when they were the best rotation in baseball for the first month and a half of the season. I still didn't pivot. I gave them credit because they deserved it, but I still wasn't confident this rotation was going to hold up. I always said that. I never pivoted from that. Because there is no mistake that the Mets have been losing for what? 3.5 months now. They've been one of the worst teams over the last 3.5 months. Let's say 4 months. And everybody just is not going to just blame the pitching? Like, it ain't the problem? We had to revamp our entire bullpen at the trade deadline because our starting pitchers could not go deep for the first 3.5 months of the season, where only David Peterson was going 6 innings and nobody else, and everybody act like it was okay. Oh, everybody's like, well, look at the ERA. Yeah, they were going 4 innings. They were going 4.5 innings, 5 innings, barely. When you don't throw a lot of innings and you're not giving up a lot of runs, but you're going 4 2/3 and you're not going more than 5 innings, you're not throwing up a lot of innings there. So the ERA is going to look a hell of a lot better. Like, you got to break down the stats. I hate when people talk about just one stat and act like it's not affecting another. No, D, it's cool. It's cool. But a fact's a fact. We got to understand that the problem with the rotation greatly affected the early bullpen guys. Mitzer got hurt. Like, we signed him from getting a major surgery. And we pitched him tremendously too much. And we pitched everybody too much. Reed Garrett got hurt because of it. All these guys got hurt. All these guys got, Yoasker Brosman was great. And then he fell apart. Why? Because he was overused. So the rotation and the lack of it being not just effective. They were effective the first month and a half of the season. But when you don't provide length, it puts a shadow on the entire rotation of what the real problem always was. And I always talked about the length of them going deeper into games. They had to do it. I understand the first maybe 3 starts, maybe 4, you're going to be careful. But after that, you can't be careful. You don't have time to be wasting in mid-May, late June to be fucking with their innings. You don't got time for that. If you're going to talk about sustained success, a contender in this league, you can't worry about 3 or 4 guys because it's not one guy. If it's one guy you got to worry about innings, you can figure that out. But when you got 2 or 3 guys in your rotation that you have to worry about innings, that's a problem. They always worry with Kodai Senga when it comes to off days innings early on this season. We all know about Clay Holmes. We know Minaya wasn't starting the season. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Like, we all should have saw this coming. And then trading the bulk of minor leaguers to get the revamped bullpen of Soto, Rogers, and Helsley is a big risk. Is a huge risk because how volatile a bullpen is. Bullpens are volatile. You never know, even based on the names. You just don't know. Especially in season. And we're seeing it firsthand. We are seeing it firsthand, folks. No, Dola, I'm not surprised how garbage Mullins is. I'm not. I never wanted Cedric Mullins. I didn't. Go back to the shows, the hot stove, the trade deadline shows. I did not want Cedric Mullins. I've always said I believe Stearns is probably going to end up getting Mullins because it just made sense because he's a cheap bastard. Again, if you were going to trade these, look, we're still dealing with the nonsense of this lineup as we get to the game in a few minutes. Why is Luisano Acuna playing? The guy can't hit. Brett Beatty started twice in this 4-game series? That's ridiculous. He's been one of their better players. And they're going by matchups again. Luisano could have hit a beach ball. Like, we've been scoring runs? No. Put Brett Beatty in the lineup. Luisano Acuna does not deserve to start. This is the logjam that I've talked about that is causing Mendoza to make decisions based on trying to get guys playing time. This is the problem. And it's still going on game 147. Still. This is frustrating to the point where it does not make sense. This is why at the deadline I said you got to make decisions on these guys. You can't have all these guys on this roster or in this organization with the hopes of them being on the roster or in this organization where they could come up and be on this roster, especially in September, and we're still dealing with this nonsense. They finally put Jeff McNeil in center field. Great. Brett Beatty should be playing second base, not Luisano Acuna. It just doesn't make sense. Like, we're still dealing with this shit. Like, what are we doing here? And Sal said it best. There is no urgency. The urgency should have started in June with the pitching problems. Because if you do it in June, you have a better understanding of your top pitching prospects, or at least one or two of them, when you get to the trade deadline. Because why do we hear that he's still evaluating these players? What the fuck are you doing? What are you evaluating? If you're still evaluating, then you're not doing your job properly. How do you not know these guys? What are you doing? You had to make a decision on 2 out of the 4 guys that constantly kept logjams on this team the entire season. Brett Beatty and Acuna from day one in Houston made no fucking sense. Made no sense. Luisano Acuna did not deserve to be up with this team. He didn't. He played like crap in spring training. Brett Beatty had a great spring training. He deserved to be the starting second baseman when McNeil went down in spring training. Yet, on opening day, because Framber Valdez was on the mound, Luisano Acuna got the start. What does that tell you on day one about the organization if you're Brett Beatty? I played my ass off in spring training. Acuna did not play well at all, and I did not start on opening day. That is ridiculous. You put your best lineup, the guys who deserve to be in that lineup on opening day, not a guy because he's a righty against a lefty. That is just so stupid. So stupid. It just did not make no sense. And it started from that first day on opening day in March in Houston. That I was freaking crazy about that lineup. It just doesn't make no sense. There is there's indecision with David Stearns that has caused a lot of these problems that trickles down to Mendoza because he's got a bunch of young kids that can't play every day. That's the problem. Not only did some of them not play well, but they continue to be on this roster, and you can't sit them for 5 days. Like all these guys are used to playing every day. Why do we just assume they're going to be good when you play twice a week? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And Dolo, nor should they, because Mauricio also got playing time once Vientos was playing like shit and Beatty was playing second base. And Beatty, was not playing well either. Mauricio was getting a ton of playing time. He failed as well. Acuna basically got the second base job when Beatty went down, and Acuna failed. So I don't want to hear that nonsense. Acuna and Mauricio basically warms the bench. Acuna barely played because Beatty started to hit. Acuna wasn't hitting, so you couldn't put him at second. Like, you kept on keeping these guys on the roster. Mendoza feels obligated to play these guys. And you can't sit these guys for 5 days and expect them to go 3 for 4 when they actually get a start. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I truly believe that Mendoza got the shit end of the stick this year. Now, there's some decisions that are in game that piss me off. And he's had a worse season than last year. But let's not act like the roster was, perfectly aligned and perfectly put together. It was a bad roster construction all season. It has not changed. The constant moving bullpen guys out of the bullpen into the minor leagues, DFAing guys, optioning guys back and forth. Mendoza never had a consistent bullpen because he kept on taking guys out of the bullpen because of options, which it just fucks with Mendoza. It just completely fucks Mendoza. It doesn't make sense. Like, every day there's 2 or 3 new guys in the bullpen from the beginning of the year. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's David Stearns acting like he's doing work when he's not doing anything. That's the problem. And then you have 4 of your prospects in Vientos, Beatty, Acuna, and Mauricio. At the time, Mauricio wasn't here yet, but when Mauricio got healthy, it was all 4 of them on this roster. That doesn't make sense. They all can't play. They all can't play. And then when Vientos has sucked for 120 games, you had to sit him because he was a complete disaster. So you're getting Acuna and Mauricio playing, back and forth. None of them are hitting. And then when Acuna doesn't hit for 2 days, you sit him to play Mauricio for 2 days because you need offense, and Mauricio sucks. So both of these guys suck. And then what do? We're back to square one. They never gave a legitimate chance to anybody. That's why they needed to trade these guys, to make the decision permanent. Make a decision on 2 guys. That's the indecisiveness that I can't stand about Stearns. The indecisiveness of not bringing up the young pitchers earlier, and the indecisiveness of keeping this roster, these kids, up or not traded at the deadline, at least 2 of them. It didn't make sense. You had to make a decision. If it's Beatty and Vientos you wanted to keep, you needed to trade Mauricio and Acuna. If you wanted to keep Mauricio and Beatty, you got to trade Vientos and Acuna. If you wanted to keep Acuna and Vientos, you had to trade Beatty and Mauricio. It just doesn't make sense. And Dolo, you're probably right. It just doesn't make sense. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, if you look at not just the antics with Gilbert, if you look at the process of what's going on in the minor leagues with Ryan Clifford and Jet Williams, they surpassed Drew Gilbert. Like, I didn't understand the trade of Buto and Gilbert for Tyler Rogers, but I understand Gilbert. I would have used Gilbert in a better trade. Again, if that was for a starting pitcher, I think that made more sense. Like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand it, guys. I really don't get it. Like, this lineup is stupid. Like, I understand, Alvarez played 4 days in a row. You got to give him a break. Like, his hands are just, he got hands of a 40-year-old, Francisco Alvarez, and the guy's 22, 23. Yeah, Ray Gilbert's a spark plug, but again, where was he playing with this Mets team? And don't tell me center field, because he wasn't playing center field in the minor leagues. He was playing in right field. So where are you playing him? He started as a center fielder, but he eventually went to a corner outfield because they didn't think he was a good enough center fielder. And clearly the Giants don't think so either, because he plays the corner outfield. So he's a spark plug with the Giants because the Giants had nothing in right field. So they had a spot for him. The Mets didn't. You got Nimmo in left field. You got Juan Soto in right field. Where are you playing him? Now, some could have said, hey, you could have thrown him in center field and see how it goes. But once he doesn't make, certain plays defensively, now your defense gets worse and you hope he hits. Spark plug or not, he didn't make sense for the Mets at this current moment. Yeah, easy. I agree. You can't look at Drew Gilbert being a spark plug for a Mets team that didn't have a spot for him. They just didn't. And when Ryan Clifford and Jet Williams surpass you on the depth charts as outfielders, he's the odd man out, unfortunately. But I didn't mind trading Drew Gilbert, but it needed to be for something better than Tyler Rogers. Now, Tyler Rogers is a good get, but not for what you gave up for him. I would use Drew Gilbert, Jose Buto, and another top prospect to get a pitcher in here that's better. Even if it was not even a top 2 pitcher, even if it was a solid middle of the rotation guy like a number 3, that he could have solidified his rotation a little bit and kind of like calm down the pressure a little bit. Because let's be honest, wouldn't it have been more smart to get a middle of the rotation guy that, gives you innings and kind of gives you solid starts every 5th day? Not even if it's a top starter. Let's not go into that top starter conversation. But let's say a middle of the rotation guy that gives you innings and gives you solid outings. Not great outings, but solid every 5th day. Wouldn't that have calmed the waters a little bit of this rotation? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. The logic in it, the logic of trading Drew Gilbert wasn't my problem. It's why you traded Drew Gilbert for Tyler Rogers along with Jose Buto. You could have got something better in the rotation than trying to get another bullpen arm. You have guys, you have Ross in the minors that you could have brought up. You could have tried other guys in the minors. It's just weird. Yeah, easy. I agree with, but that's fine. Like I said, I don't think you could have. I wanted the top 2 starter, but even if that was too expensive, you still could have found a middle of the rotation guy on a bad team that gives you at least innings and throws good, has solid outings. I'm not talking about 6 innings of, a 1-run ball, but gives you 5-6 innings on a consistent basis, giving up 4 runs a game. That's not great, but it helps your bullpen. It gives you a chance to win. When you're constantly giving up 5 runs a game, 6 runs a game, you're not winning. But easy. We have to go back and look at the names. But you're going to tell me you couldn't get not one bad team that has a guy who's an innings guy that you couldn't bring in this rotation that the Mets have done? They have no innings guys. Like, you couldn't get that for even half of what you got for Tyler Rogers? Like, I gotta look at the rosters and stuff like that. But there was middle of the rotation guys available. But again, the teams that needed starters, top starters, didn't get them because they were very expensive. And again, maybe I pushed that to the side a little bit because I'm still annoyed about that. But I understand the argument of being too expensive. But there was definitely guys out there that were middle of the pack, because the Mets that are contenders are the only team that are in a playoff spot that has problems with pitchers in their rotation when it comes to innings. Easy. Again, I got to look at the rosters. I'm not going to sit on my phone and look down on you guys. Again, next show, I'll have a couple of names for you. I will. Don't worry. That's it. Like, that's the problem. Like, you always say who, but you never give me names because you're not going to do the homework, even though you're just watching me. You can look at your phone right now and tell me. Give me names. Like, there's guys that are probably, you might think are not as good as Shomanaya, Kodai Senga, or others, but this team needed innings as well. If you're not going to get overall good starts, give me something, decent with innings. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you're going to find names of bad teams that have starters that are not great. I'm not going to say, oh my God, like it's earth-shattering. Like, you're going to be excited about that. But you still, no, you don't have to do my homework, but we act like there's not guys out there, right? You complained about, oh, well, who's the top names? Yeah, Sandy Alcantara looked good against the Mets. Ever since the All-Star break, he's been outstanding, but you didn't want him because he was expensive. Oh, I'm sorry. Because the Mets don't make actual decisions at the deadline. They make cheap-ass decisions where they rather give quantity over quality of minor leaguers because that seems like a better idea. When you could have traded 3 or 4 top 10 prospects instead of trading what do they trade? 12 top 20 to 25 prospects and ended up getting bullpen arms? I mean, come on. Like, look, I'm not mad that they brought in Helsley. Nobody was mad about that. Nobody could have predicted he was going to be this bad. Tyler Rogers has been serviceable, probably a little bit better than most. And Soto's been okay. He was really good in the beginning. Now he's struggling. But you gave up a lot of quantity for 3 rentals in your bullpen. You're not giving up all 3 of those pitches. Come on. They were not going to ask for all 3 of those pitches. Come on. Easy. You're just being stupid. You're just being a dick. That's what you're doing. They're not asking for all 3 of those guys. Everybody would hang up the phone on that. But you're going to tell me Tong? Because Tong was clearly the choice of a lot of teams. Tong was the guy. I mean, out of the 3, Tong has been the worst. No, I mean, not saying he's been bad, but he's been the worst. But you could have gave up. Yes, I would have given up Jet Williams. See, here's the problem when it comes to me. Don't talk to me about prospects, and I give up anybody because I always take the proven talent. Because don't tell me you're trying to win and all the evidence is showing that you're not trying to win. Because if these kids were so good and David Stearns believed in them so much that they were untouchable, they needed to be here in June. He failed that. But you know what, Dola? It's not about seeing Tong. The fact of the matter is, we talk about this all the time. Is there really a possibility all 3 of these kids are going to be top aces or top 2 starters? Probably not. There's going to be one of them, probably McLean, or let's just say one of them. I'm not going to put up a name. But let's just say one of them is going to be a very, very good pitcher, like top 2 starter. Do we really believe that these other guys, these other 2 are going to be outstanding starters? Or they're going to be a couple of number 3s and number 4s, which are fine in the rotation, but not to be acting like they're trying to not trade them and they're untouchable because of it. Easy. Abso-fucking-lutely. Because you know what? We don't have an Alcantara on this team. He throws 6 innings consistently. He's been outstanding since the All-Star break. A hell of a lot better than any other pitcher in this rotation. Yeah, I would have. And I guarantee you probably could have kept McLean and you could have gave up Tong or Sproat and Jet Williams. And you know what? Throw somebody else in there. Hey, maybe Drew Gilbert if you didn't want to give up him for Tyler Rogers. Hey, how about who else? Who else do you want? You're talking to the wrong person. AJ Ewan, Santucci. How many more pitching prospects are we going to have? What are we going to have, a 9-man rotation next year? Dolo, you don't have to trust Alcantara. But everybody talked about the numbers prior to the deadline, and say, I don't want him because look at his numbers. He's been outstanding ever since. So let's talk about numbers. Everybody wanted to bring up his bad numbers in the first half, but in the second half, they're damn good. Now nobody wants to bring up numbers. And I'm not telling you that Sandy Alcantara would be the difference. I'm not saying he's going to bring us to a World Series. But nobody can change my mind that he couldn't be better than everybody that we currently have. Maybe minus McLean. You're telling me you could have traded Jonah Tong, Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert, and let's say another prospect. You wouldn't do that? Like, Jet Williams, where is he playing next year? Hold me on that center field bullshit. Like, come on. All year we needed the center fielder. Why hasn't he come up? What are we waiting for? All I hear, every time I hear, oh, Jet Williams doing great, Jet Williams doing great, bring him up. Why are we playing around with Jose Siri, Tyrone Taylor, Cedric Mullins? Why are we playing with that? Why even waste your time? Because next year we're going to have the same problem. We're going to have more guys in the same positions. Again. Because you know the talk is going to be about Ryan Clifford, Jet Williams, guys like that. Like, this is what we're talking about here. Like, stop telling me you're trying to win, and then you bring up the prospects too late. You don't do anything at the deadline worth talking about. And then we wonder why teams like the Phillies, teams like the Padres, teams like the Dodgers, the Cubs, all these other teams are continuing to play well and the Mets are failing. And then we wonder why. It just doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. This team is one of the best teams in baseball at the end of May. It shouldn't have come to be this bad. And we act like we're just going to go through a deadline. And again, this is the problem. When you prospect hug too much, you end up like the Orioles, who had one really good season last year, and they're already talking about trading some of these guys and breaking up these young kids. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you got too many guys that are in their 30s, that are getting older, that you have long-term contracts to, that you can't be wasting time with these core guys and talk about these kids. If they're so good and you don't want to trade them, they need to be a decision of what you're going to do with these guys on the major league roster, not anywhere else. I don't give a fuck what they do in the minors. Every fucking day, Ernest Dove, who does great work, I got to see another tweet about another player doing well in the minor leagues when they should be helping his team. I'm sick of it. Either bring these kids up to help this roster or fucking trade them. Don't waste everybody's time. Because when we lose and we don't win a World Series, God forbid not make the playoffs, all I'm going to hear is the fucking excuses from David Stearns once again that, oh, well, look at the next year look of this New York Mets team, right? Did we fail? Yeah, our goal was to make the playoffs. Well, Stearns, you didn't do a good fucking job doing that. Why are you blaming everybody else when you fucked up? Because that's going to be the excuse. He's going to talk about Sean Manaea being injured when, let's be honest, I never thought Sean Manaea was going to be as good as he was last year. And it wasn't going to help enough him being average. Let's be honest about that. You trusted Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea, two guys. Kodai Senga, we all know what I think of him. He's a piece of shit. He's constantly hurt. He's way too inconsistent, and he needs 10 days off the pitch. Sean Manaea, look at his career stats. Why do we act like this guy is a fucking ace? I'm so sick and tired of people acting like they don't look at numbers. And they look at 3 months, and then all of a sudden they're throwing a fucking parade that we gave Sean Manaea $25 million. And I blame Met fans for that because they were way too excited about that. Like, be more mad that your GM, your president of baseball ops, really did a bad fucking job. He's still evaluating guys that are now up here. And he did it too late when he could have saved the really good start the Mets had in June, or at least tried to. You don't tell me you tried in August. That does not make no sense. You were already spiraling out of control. We know they didn't plan for these kids. It was obvious by the signings they made in the offseason and the guys they already have in this rotation. Don't tell me there was a plan for these guys in our farm system to be a part of this rotation. It never was their plan to put them up this year. Maybe you might have seen one in September as a call-up. Maybe. But the goal was to go with the guys they signed and the guys that were already on this roster. With Senga. With Peterson. Then you brought in Montaz, Manaya, Holmes. Those are 5 guys. And oh, by the way, let's talk about Tyler McGill. That was the rotation they were going with. Don't make anybody tell you otherwise. Because David Stearns, if he says that he planned on using these kids, then the plan should have been in June, not August or in fucking September. Please. The fact that the Mets are falling apart at the seams and were once 20-plus games over 500 and are now 6 games over 500 at 76 and 70 with 16 games to go and on basically life support, holding on to this third wild card. They're 2 games up on the Reds and officially 2 games on the Giants, but we all know it's 3 because of a tiebreaker. A lot of these teams are playing each other, so it helps a little bit. But the Mets still control their own destiny. If they're going to limp into the postseason like they did in 2022, and then ultimately we already know that it's going to be a disaster, and we all hope it's not. We all hope they find their fountain of youth and they figure out how to play baseball and they go on a run. Maybe they will. But if they don't, there better be no excuses coming from your guy's mouth or David Stearns' mouth or Cohen's mouth. Because they fucked up. They fucked up. You don't sign Pete Alonso for $30 million. You don't sign Juan Soto for $800 million and do a half-ass rotation like you couldn't spend more money. Like you couldn't make a trade in the offseason like a Garrett Crochet that, look at he never pitched any innings. Well, he's doing pretty damn fucking well with Boston. And they're not worried about his innings. Stop it. Once again, let's not trade the prospects. When a guy who took a very team-friendly extension once he got traded to Boston. So don't tell me about money. How much is Garrett Crochet making? Let's check really quick because I'm very curious. I forgot the contract, but it was pretty team-friendly. Let's see. I don't know it off the top of my head. 6 years, $170 million. Beautiful. Right? 170 divided by 6 is $28.3 million for a very young Garrett Crochet who is 27 years old. Actually, 26 this year. 26. For another $3 million each year and another 3 years on the contract with a couple of prospects to trade. Because I don't hear Boston complaining about their prospects they gave up. Even though they haven't had a great season, but Garrett Crochet has been damn good. Right? So, why aren't we talking about Stearns' money allocation? I thought he was supposed to be a genius with that. His money allocation for the rotation was god-awful. You could have traded for Garrett Crochet. Yeah, you had to give up a lot, sure. But again, Boston's not complaining about the prospects. And you could have signed a 26-year-old for a 6-year deal for a very team-friendly deal where you didn't have to give an 8-year deal to an over 30-year-old Max Fried or a Corbin Burns where everybody seemed to not want to do as well. And who was okay with giving short-term deals to rotation guys that are not very good. Because no good pitcher takes short-term deals. You're getting the scrubs. You're getting the middle-of-the-road guys, hoping for better seasons. That's what Stearns did. So you could have traded for Garrett Crochet and signed him, which nobody would have had a problem with. Sorry, right? Nobody was excited about McLean or Tong or more people were excited about Sproat. Nobody was talking about McLean and Tong in the offseason like they were in the middle of this season. So let's not act like we were. Dio, exactly. I mean, God forbid you don't pay Frankie Montas if you got Garrett Crochet. How would it look to have Garrett Crochet at the top of this rotation? Last time I checked, he's healthy. He's still pitching. You gave $25 million to Manaea. So $3 million more for 3 more years was backbreaking with a couple of prospects you traded. What are you going to say? You were evaluating still? You hope McLean, Tom, or Sproat is as good as Garrett Crochet, and you better be right. Because these guys better not flame out. Because if they do, David Stern's finding another job. I'm telling you that right now. You don't make trades because you're telling me these guys are all legit, and I hope they are. Because we're in for a rude fucking awakening if we're not. Because there's a couple of other guys that will probably be on the market next year, and there's a couple of decent pitching free agents, which we know they're not going to spend money on. So, ultimately, the Mets better fucking win today. And I don't care how they do it. David Peterson had a better, saying that sarcastically, a better start than he did in his prior 5-6 starts. Now, this is a start where we need David Peterson to perform. But we also need the offense to wake the hell up again. Where have you been? Let's go. I don't like the lineup. I think Acuna in the lineup is stupid. Whatever. Sanger, I understand Sanger in the lineup because Alvarez played 4 days in a row. Alvarez needs a break with those hands. Marte's DHing. It is what it is. He did get an RBI yesterday. But we know the deal. The top 5 guys in the lineup need to do their job. It's just that simple. How about going in the first inning and give Peterson the lead? Peterson needs to step up. This lineup needs to step up. Mendoza needs to step up. Everybody needs to step up. Win a goddamn game. Get back on the winning track. Because if you win today, you don't got a scoreboard watch. You're at least 2 games up on anybody who wins today. And if anybody loses, great. Now 15 games to play in the season. Let's get a win today, guys. How we do it, I don't know. I don't care at this point. I don't care if Harper trips over the ball and he flips up in the air and the Mets score 1 run and we win the ball game on an error. I don't care. I really don't care at this point. And I forgot who was it. Lulu? Was it Lulu or let me see. Yeah, it was Lulu. I can't do a post game. I'm working in about a couple hours. So unfortunately, I can't. David, they were a mediocre wild card team last year, but I guarantee you watched every playoff game. Sorry. Stop worrying about the division. The only way the Mets can make the playoffs is a wild card team. That's it. It is what it is. You don't like it, don't watch. I just don't understand you. You watched every game last year in the postseason while they barely made the playoffs in the last game of the year. Who cares if you make the wild card? Look, we all want to win a division. When that's not in your hands and it's basically out of reach, you get in a wild card and you see what happens. Because we've seen wild card teams make the playoffs, go on runs, and win World Series, make World Series. It does not matter. Finally, you got 2 of the best teams that won division last year that made the World Series. Very rare. Make the fucking playoffs. At the very least, we deserve you to see you in the playoffs at least. We dealt with this shit. It is what it is. And no, the Mets are not like the Dallas Cowboys because the Mets don't make the playoffs every year like the Dallas Cowboys, unlike last year with the Cowboys. So no, they're not. Until the Mets make the playoffs year after year after year and fail year after year after year, which again, when Stearns talks about sustained success, he's not talking about World Series championships. I want to make everybody clear about that. He's talking about making the postseason. But that shit gets stale quickly when you don't win. It gets stale really quickly. You can make the World Series you can make the playoffs 6 years in a row. If you constantly get bounced and not win a World Series, that's not a message anymore. Nobody cares. Oh, great, you made the playoffs. You got to eventually win. So with that said, I can't do a post game today, unfortunately. The Mets are 2 games up on the Reds, 2 games up on the Giants, officially 3 because of the tiebreaker. Mets, wake up. Hear that Philadelphia bell. Win a ball game by any means necessary. That goes for the players. That goes for the coaches. Do your goddamn jobs. All of you are getting paid a hell of a lot of money, and you all are not doing your job. Somebody needs to step up. I don't give a shit who it is anymore. I don't care who the leader is. I don't care who's the funny guy, who's the guy that smiles, who's the cute guy, who's the respected guy. I don't give a shit. Somebody wake up this team. Get the job done. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning into the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channel and on X. Once again, no postgame tonight. Unfortunately, work is just killing me right now, but it is what it is. We all got to make money somehow, some way. Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the game. Let's go, Mets, and let's get a goddamn W, guys. Have a good night, and let's go, Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP.